At exactly 5:30 a.m., just as the first golden streaks of sunlight began to edge across the horizon, the deafening wail of sirens shattered the quiet morning on my ranch. I stumbled out onto my porch, barely awake, coffee mug slipping from my fingers as I watched 5 massive fire trucks barrel down my private dirt road, trailing a cloud of dust in their wake. But it wasn't the trucks that startled me. It was what they screeched to a halt for. There, right in the center of my back acreage land specifically designated for the fire department's annual live fire training, stood a bright pink camping tent. Tiki torches flickering like sentinels, a fold-out table laid out for breakfast, and a woman in a leopard print bathrobe casually roasting marshmallows over a tiny fire pit. It was so surreal I half wondered if I was still dreaming. The fire trucks skidded slightly as they stopped, their headlights slicing through the dim morning light and bathing the bizarre little campsite in blinding white. For a moment, there was silence. The firefighters stood still, glancing at each other in disbelief. I stood motionless on the porch, slack-jawed. Then the woman, unbothered by the presence of half the county's emergency personnel, turned her head lazily, exhaled a marshmallow-scented smoke ring, and shouted, "You're blocking my sunrise view." The day before had been too quiet. I had walked my property, checked the fire break lines, and made sure everything was ready for the department's training exercises. It was a deal that had worked well for years. They got realistic terrain to practice. I got a stipend and goodwill from the city. There had been no signs of trespassers, no strange footprints, nothing out of place. And yet, sometime during the night, this woman had set up camp like some deranged fairy godmother with bad taste. When I reached the scene, she was already in a heated argument with the fire chief. Hands planted firmly on her hips, oversized sunglasses sliding down her nose, she was shouting with enough force to spook the birds from the nearby trees. "This is public land. I have squatters' rights. You can't just barge in here like you're somebody." The chief, a seasoned veteran who once walked into a burning trailer to save a meth addict's dog, looked ready to call in a helicopter strike. I stepped forward and introduced myself as the landowner. She scoffed, reaching into her leopard print tote and pulling out a crumpled sheet of paper. "I rented this property from Craigslist," she snapped, holding the page up like it was a court summons. "Paid good money, too." I looked at the ad. A blurry photo of a random field, a vague description, and a line that read, "Private retreat. $50 per night. No questions asked. No name. No address. No coordinates." She had been scammed, but she didn't care. When I gently pointed this out and explained the fire drill about to take place, she folded her arms defiantly. "Well, you'd better cancel your little field day," she said, smirking. "Because I'm not moving. I have rights." The fire chief pulled me aside. "We can't delay," he said, voice tight. 3 departments are coordinating. If we don't start soon, the entire schedule collapses." I nodded. We tried everything, offering to move her gear, calling a tow service, even offering to cover a night in a real campground. She refused. Instead, she pulled out her phone and began live streaming. "Save my camp. Stop the tyranny," she shouted to her audience of tens. The firefighters were getting restless. They needed to erect structures, lay out hoses, and prepare the ignition sites. Every second wasted meant money lost, time burned, and an increased risk of error. Meanwhile, Karen, because that was the only name that suited her, cracked open a soda, kicked back in her chair, and ignored everyone. Then she made her fatal mistake. She called 911 on speakerphone, claiming she was under siege by violent firemen. The dispatcher calmly informed her the fire department was authorized to be there. She ignored it, screeching about lawsuits, therapy, and war crimes. The chief gave the signal. Crews moved in. The first metal frame went up, smoke machines hissed, and hoses were unrolled. Karen's smug grin evaporated. She jumped up, shouting that we were ruining her spiritual retreat. When fake flames erupted across the field, her pink tent glowed like a lantern in the night. I stood next to the chief and whispered, "This is just the warm-up." She ranted, paced, live-streamed, and screamed. When the firefighters ignored her, she took matters into her own hands, grabbing equipment, dragging hoses, kicking over gear. She crossed the line from nuisance to hazard. 2 off-duty officers assisting that day restrained her as gently as possible. Sheriff's deputies arrived. Karen collapsed to her knees, crying about persecution. When coaxed to leave peacefully, she sprang up, climbed a fire truck, and shouted, "This is my lifeboat. I'm not going down with the Titanic." She was escorted off the vehicle and into the back of a patrol car. still shrieking about emotional damages and legal rights. Once she was gone, drills resumed. But her chaos lingered. Hours later, the chief told me Karen's lawyer just called dispatch. She's threatening to sue us all. Sure enough, days later, I was served. Her lawsuit accused us of emotional distress, property damage, spiritual vandalism, and more. My attorney, Lisa, was unimpressed. She prepared a countersuit, malicious prosecution, trespassing, interference with emergency services. The fire department joined in. Lisa unearthed Karen's history: 3 states, multiple incidents of fraudulent camping and nuisance suits. News of the fiasco spread. Local headlines mocked her. Memes flooded the internet. One training structure was unofficially renamed Camp Karen. She became a national joke. In court, she showed up in a baggy gray suit, pretending to limp. Her lawyer gave a theatrical speech about civil rights and PTSD. Lisa calmly demolished their case with timelines, footage, witness testimony, and a pattern of fraud. Karen crumbled on the stand. Her lies tangled. Her tears dried up. The judge ruled swiftly, case dismissed with prejudice. Karen was ordered to pay damages, court costs, and 200 hours of community service with the fire department. On her first day, I drove by. There she was, in oversized turnout gear, scrubbing a fire engine while recruits smirked. She flailed with hoses, stumbled through drills, and fell into a training puddle. Cameras caught it all. She became the butt of every firefighter joke. Weeks passed. Her service ended quietly. She left without a word. I received a restitution check and donated it to a burn victims fund in her name. The training field was renamed with a wooden sign, Karen's Retreat, cartoon tent aflame. She tried to bully her way to sympathy. Instead, she mopped floors, earned memes, and left town in disgrace. And the fire department? Stronger than ever. As for Karen, her legend lives on, a cautionary tale in leopard print. At exactly 5:30 a.m., just as the first golden streaks of sunlight began to edge across the horizon, the deafening wail of sirens shattered the quiet morning on my ranch. I stumbled out onto my porch, barely awake, coffee mug slipping from my fingers as I watched 5 massive fire trucks barrel down my private dirt road, trailing a cloud of dust in their wake. But it wasn't the trucks that startled me. It was what they screeched to a halt for. There, right in the center of my back acreage land, specifically designated for the fire department's annual live fire training, stood a bright pink camping tent. Tiki torches flickering like sentinels, a fold-out table laid out for breakfast, and a woman in a leopard print bathrobe casually roasting marshmallows over a tiny fire pit. It was so surreal I half wondered if I was still dreaming. The fire trucks skidded slightly as they stopped, their headlights slicing through the dim morning light and bathing the bizarre little campsite in blinding white. For a moment, there was silence. The firefighters stood still, glancing at each other in disbelief. I stood motionless on the porch, slack-jawed. Then the woman, unbothered by the presence